Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at the blood moon total lunar eclipse at 15 Pisces, which is occurring either on the 7th or the 8th of September 2025. And if you live in North America, it will be on the 7th. It's going to be those places in the southern hemisphere that I believe are on the 8th. And those are going to be the places where you will actually see it. Because apparently, I am American, we're not going to see it here. But let's see, I did look it up. They said Western Australia, Asia, which is pretty vague. Oh, maybe they mean all of Asia. So I guess maybe that's what they meant. But also they said Western Australia. This is livescience.com that I'm getting this from. And then they said, oh, if you live in Europe, most of you will be able to see some of this total eclipse. And they said Africa as well. So I guess North America is really being left out of this, as well as South America, the Americas, Central America. But in any case, this is in Pisces at 15 degrees, and it's a corn moon. The full moons in North America are named, and sometimes in Europe they're referred to by these names too. The full moon in Aries, I believe it's on October 6th. That will be the harvest moon. So we're still bringing in the harvest. I've been having corn out of my ears the last few weeks. So it's going to continue into the month of September, obviously, apparently. And I want to talk about the blood moon is dramatic, but it simply means a total lunar eclipse. But there will be a tint. From what I understand, from what I read online, it's actually more coppery than the blood red that you would associate with that title. So whatever, I think it's still kind of fun. Just like you have other times when the moon, well, I was going to say a pink moon, but that has nothing to do with the time of year. So maybe it's always about the lunar eclipse. So I really want to talk about I was going to call it symbolism of this moon, but it's really not symbolism. It's astrological, and it could really be this energy that we associate with Pisces and how that plays into the total lunar eclipse. First of all, a lunar eclipse is a powerful full moon. So at the time of every full moon, every lunar eclipse, the sun will be in opposition. The sun will be in opposition at that 15-degree mark. The number 15 is a number of personal transformation. I actually looked this up because I do believe that in some numerology circles, they would add up the 1 and the 5. But everything that I saw, I didn't research too much. I just wanted to get some feel for it. They were just talking about the individual components, the 1 and the 5 versus the 6, which the number 6 relates to Venus. And it has that connection to harmony. But what they were talking about is that the 1 is a number of individuality. You could say it's initiation, it's igniting your creativity, and the number 5 is a number of freedom and number of change. So when you one you can think of as the individual. So it really is about change. And how does this play out? Well, we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces. Lunar eclipse is things being purged, released. The house that Pisces rules in astrology is the 12th house. So it's the last house. It represents something, the finality of something, letting go of something. Actually, the 12th house in Pisces, because Pisces is ruled by Neptune, can be about self-defeating patterns, addictions, self-limiting beliefs even. It can be all these things, escapism, because Pisces, ruled by Neptune, can be about illusion. It can also be about creativity and amazing inspiration. This is why Pisces people tend to be naturally creative and naturally spiritual. Of course, we can't ignore that very important part of Pisces, which is the spiritual dimensions. And so we have this lunar eclipse, the letting go of something, the spiritual downloads where somebody gets like, they go online. I've heard many people use that expression talking about their spiritual awakening, that they were going online. It was like being plugged into something, and all of a sudden they had all this knowledge. You could call it wisdom that they didn't have before. What happens? How does that happen? Well, something is activated, something is opened up that allows that person to take in that type of higher knowledge. For maybe the average person, that would never be in their vicinity, their reality. So, but the sun is in Virgo. Couldn't be more different, the odd couple, these opposing signs. Virgo, and by the way, when you have opposing signs, they're not always going to be so different. Sometimes, they're also called complementary signs, and they will tend to have certain things in common, even though they oppose one another. But with Virgo and Pisces, there's like such a pronounced difference between these two signs. So Virgo is all about order, like organization. It rules the 6th house, which is the house of your daily routine. Like, what is your daily schedule like? Do you have, because Virgo is associated with efficiency, productivity. Do you have that? I have Neptune in the 6th house, so you do the math, how I have tended to operate in my life. But I just want to make it clear that whatever you have in your natal chart, it doesn't mean that you just say, okay, well, I have Neptune in the 6th house. I am destined to be very disorganized and, not to have a schedule and to do this and to not do that. And that's your template, or like you could call it your cosmic blueprint, but that doesn't mean that's what you're working with. It doesn't mean that you have to stay in that spot. If you have challenging things in your natal chart, then you can work on those things. Knowledge is power, but a lot of people, if they're not exploring these types of avenues, they may be frustrated by their life, and they may be like, I don't know why, but I can't ever get anything accomplished. And they don't realize that there is a very good reason for it, but that reason is not there to give them something to blame. It's there so that they can work with it as one of the challenges in their life to overcome. Same with the squares that you have, or the oppositions. These aren't like built-in excuses for you not to achieve, manifest the things that you want. It's just saying, okay, these are your, I don't even like to use the word like handicaps, but that is kind of an okay word, because it's like you have these obstacles, and so how can you work with these opposing forces or this blocked energy to kind of transcend it? And with the Virgo-Pisces axis, we're talking about the practical versus the mystical. And people, because there's a lot of binary thinking in this world, and like us versus them, or whatever you want to call it, dualism, people tend to take sides. Okay, I am on Team Virgo. I am somebody who is very disciplined. Everything is scheduled in my life, and I am so productive. And then you have the Pisces person who's like, I'm flowing through life. Life is this cosmic trip that I'm on, and I'm not going to get sucked into the matrix, into thinking that I have to have this 9-to-5 job, and I'm, totally outside of this system. I'm doing my own thing, or I'm just like in la la land. Well, I'm being a little bit facetious, obviously, and I'm not putting down, the spiritual side at all. But it's like, the true thing is, how do we integrate these things? Because they appear to us as opposing forces, and the temptation towards escapism is very real. People tend to think of, substance abuse as escapism, but there's so many more forms of it, and you could call them addictions, to social media. Oh, they're I was going to say distractions, they're addictions and distractions. And so this is going to bring this to light for us. You're going to have to look at the houses that it plays out in. If you have it, if you have like your ascendant at 15 degrees or beyond of Virgo or Pisces, this is going to be in your first house and opposing the seventh. And it's going to be like this issue with relationships. Maybe you have neglected yourself. I think if you have Pisces rising, this is going to really show you how you have sacrificed yourself for another person. And you may find it through relationship drama that could very well come out if, tell you the truth, that's the one thing I do see in common with Virgo and Pisces, is this tendency to sacrifice or be codependent. With Virgo, it's more of you taking those skills that you have when it comes to practicality, productivity, and wanting to apply it to a person that may lack that, and try to help them to get their life together. That with Pisces, it's more with that unconditional love. And both of these scenarios can see somebody being pulled down by somebody else's problems if they're not careful. I'm not saying 100% of the time. It really would depend on the extent of the relationship. But if this is like, the seventh house is committed partnership. I mean, it can be any one-on-one relationship, but typically we look at that as the marriage house. And so for people who have either one of these ascendants, either, and particularly 15 plus of Pisces or Virgo, you're going to really be grappling with this issue. And but I want to make it clear that it depends on the individual chart. This is just a general forecast because, sometimes people might have a little bit of another sign in that seventh house too, and that could be where their sun is, for instance. That could be where this is falling for them. So it's not just about one thing or any like personal planet in that house that affects you in general very deeply. Because people who have their natal sun in the seventh house, they're going to be like Libra people, even if they have their sun in Aquarius. They're going to be the kind of people that have a tendency to want relationships, but they may give mixed messages. So it's just like kind of, I just wanted to clarify that. It may be different depending on your particular situation. Because this is a lunar eclipse and because the moon is in a water sign, expect to feel very emotional. This is a purge. So the beautiful thing about this is that it can assist us in purging something out of our life that is sucking at our energy, that is maybe creating some kind of grip on us that is keeping us from doing other things. I was just thinking about something that I was reading in terms of the numerology, and they were saying how the 15 is connected to the devil card in the tarot. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. And I can't remember why they were talking about anything that makes us feel like we're trapped. I mean, that's what the devil card is about, being in the clutches of lust, excessive materialism, and things of that nature. Kind of like the worldly temptations. And I suppose, when I look at the number 15, I have a feeling that it is connected to that, to adding it up with Venus, because Venus can be about pleasure, but it's also a card of balance. And so when people indulge their pleasure principle too much, it becomes addiction. And this is what Pisces represents. Well, what about that opposition? Virgo represents being very disciplined. Can you be overly disciplined? Absolutely. Can you be overly self-indulgent? Duh, of course. So how do you attain that balance? You have to call upon the higher energies of both of those signs. For Virgo, the higher energy is about purity. When you love purity, you're not going to be tempted to consume something that is garbage, that is going to trash your system in any way. It's not about willpower. It's just about this sense of being a lover of the feeling of great health and, purity being associated with that. And anything else that you're doing on a daily basis that feels wholesome. The symbol of Virgo is the maiden, but it's also known as the virgin. And that kind of thing is very important because it's when it's taken to the extreme, people can have very binary views of what is wholesome and unwholesome. And, since the sixth house can rule diet, taken to an extreme, purity in eating can be orthorexia, or anorexia if the person is really like limiting their foods because they fear something that is veering from perfectionism in terms of their health, in terms of maybe their body. With Pisces, we could say that it's more on the emotional level, because Virgo is an earth sign, so it's dealing with the practical matters. With Pisces, it's that emotional transcendence that is associated with spirituality. And so people who have Pisces sun, but it could be like, it could be the moon sign. And of course, this is a lunar eclipse, so it's the moon that is being activated here. But, anybody's in their personal chart, you might have Venus in Pisces. There's this idealism. And it's the ideal love, it's the ideal sacrifice, the Christ complex. It can have some positive sides to it, but of course, it can have that negative connotation with self-destruction coming in the form of self-denial, or, ignoring the self in favor of another, the self-sacrifice. If this is in your 6th and 12th houses, for instance, this could be the polarity. These are the houses that Virgo and Pisces rule. If you have this particular opposition with this transit, you may have this kind of like being torn between the work that you're doing and whether or not it is taking too much out of you versus your spiritual nature. Because for some people, they may feel like they're losing their soul. Maybe they're doing work that they think is wrong. Maybe somebody's spiritual path or spiritual practices are interfering with their daily life. They're not able to feel grounded. They're not able to make a living for themselves. And they feel, maybe even health-wise, they're suffering for some reason. And they feel like they have to choose one over the other. Full moons are about integration with these oppositions. But when you're talking about lunar eclipse, which, by the way, is forming a conjunction with the transiting north node, you're always talking about, with eclipses, you're talking about destiny. And this is going to be on a personal level for each of us, but also our destiny as a collective. Which timeline are we hopping on? Mars is forming an opposition with Chiron at this time. And Chiron, I read somewhere that kind of like Piscean feeling of Chiron, which makes a lot of sense to me. And with this opposition to Chiron, I would ask you, where do you feel like you need to ask permission to do something and you're afraid of someone, shooting down your request? Because we have seen Mars be adversely aspected in recent years, to Pluto, to Neptune, and these are these generational planets. And I mean, for long periods of time, and probably to Saturn, because, Mars has a very quick transit usually, so it can aspect Saturn. or square Saturn pretty easily. But these kinds of things are about our own ability to act, or it's actually not our ability to act, it's our belief in our ability to act. Because this is where this lunar eclipse in Pisces is really, to me, the crux of it. The crux of it is all about whether we are going to continue to embrace victimhood, or whether or not we are going to embrace our sovereignty. Because when I'm reading online, I still read many people who have given away their power, and they continue to do so, even though the last 5 years should have shown to us that doing that didn't lead to a greater sense of freedom, that complying, that trying to do what was expected of us. And part of that, when we have that square from Mars to Neptune, and if you have this in your natal chart, this will be something that you're always having to kind of contend with, is this idealism. And it could even be like, I would call it like a delusion, since it's a hard angle, where you believe you're doing something to be like a really good person, or to save the world, and you're really operating in this deluded state. Pisces can be delusion, which is lying to oneself, to operate in this fantasy world. And when somebody who's an actual Pisces, or maybe they have Mercury in Pisces, or they have a conjunction between the Sun and Neptune, or a square, Moon and Neptune, all those contacts that are connected to Pisces or Neptune or whatever, they don't necessarily, it's not that they know this consciously. They're just very sensitive people. And anything, whether you want to call it the truth, threatens them in terms of their ability to maintain kind of that emotional composure, where they don't feel like life is too hard, that people are too mean, that their oppositions or their obstacles are too great. There can be that sense of learned helplessness, in other words, that threatens to kind of take over, and then the person feels paralyzed. So we're really kind of grappling with this. What can we do? That Virgo can be the can-do spirit. Like, how can we organize ourselves? How can we, create a plan, be realistic, and not just, be tempted to kind of escape into some kind of fantasy that may feel good in the moment, but doesn't really accomplish anything in the long term. Mars is squaring to Jupiter, and that could be trying to bite off more than you can chew, trying to do too much at once. And this is really, when going back to that opposition to Chiron, a lot of times when people feel like their hands are tied, it's like they go from one extreme to the other. They go from feeling paralyzed to wanting to just do everything, and then feeling frustrated because they're trying to make things happen so quickly that they're not being methodical, and they're just kind of overdoing it. And there's also that impatience that is connected with Mars. So, and I was going to say abruptness, but I mean, what's that other word? Being hasty about it. I think the biggest piece in this is that Pisces represents karma. and the lunar eclipse represents release. So this is an amazing opportunity for all of us to experience karmic release in one area of our life or another. You can look to the house where 15 degrees of Pisces is for more information on this, but even like in a general sense, it's like the real finality or end of a cycle and what that means for all of us. You know, we talk about the Piscean age and the Aquarian age, but another thing that is happening for the last few months of 2025 is that both Saturn and Neptune are going back into Pisces. They're retrograding right now, and actually Saturn is going September 1st, so it's going to precede the lunar eclipse. It will be probably at like, let me see, probably about 29 degrees of Pisces, yeah. And then Neptune will follow suit. And what this means is that we have some stuff to work on. And the lunar eclipse is helping us to let go of anything that holds us back from making those changes. But sometimes these are like these energetic cords or these karmic connections. You know, Saturn is the lord of karma, so it has a connection with karma itself. But we can't feel helpless about karma. We can't feel like, oh yeah, that's my karma. It can create blockages, but it doesn't have to be that way forever. And that's where not having that learned helplessness comes in, when we look at what we can do constructively to change the course of our lives. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that you're looking forward to the transformation that this promises and the illumination as well. And thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.